the underworld or the lower world in shamanism. And I'm here to explore this today with you in a transmission because there is a lot going on. And of course, as usually, we are receiving a lot of energies, activations. We are exploring ourselves through shadows again, and this is what we also call underworld, through the shadows. We are going down below to retrieve parts of ourselves from any point of time, not necessarily only from this lifetime, but the connection is always this lifetime, the current one. It is again one more stage of transformation, one more stage of transcendence of the lower parts of our nature that we have endured, we have cut off, we have gone through pain, wounds, and the usual that I'm even bored of explaining how this goes, because if you are on this path, you already know that this is part of the awakening, part of the ascension, part of the enlightenment. We have to face our shadows. But what is different this time? Why the underworld sense is so intense than ever before, I guess? Because things are changing again, because this time around we are removing from ourselves coping mechanisms and protection mechanisms we have created to tolerate life, to tolerate those around us, to not lose our sanity, to explore who we truly are in essence, not who we are conditioned to be on this planet, through the systems we have been born into, through the society, the cultural thingies that are taking place depending on where you are located physically. So what we are exploring is actually how to remove the masks that are not serving us anymore. And don't get me wrong, even being alive is just wearing a mask. It is through the matrix and illusion we have created, and we are getting into a space of having an identity, a personality that represents part of who we are in essence. So everything is a mask, and we are unmasking many layers of ourselves. Even the self, the true self, can be a mask, but it is the more ideal, the most ideal actually mask we can wear for this incarnation. So this is how the story goes. And about the protection mechanisms, what we are exploring is why we had to create these protection mechanisms and protection tactics through our beliefs, through our experiences, why we felt unsafe, why we had to protect ourselves, in what sense, in what way. It is one of the last remaining stages of the ascension, how to remove the protection mechanisms we have created, why we created them, why we felt unsafe, unprotected, even in the dynamic of the family, even more so in the dynamic of a family, but also in the identities we wear as who we are. The biggest shift that is happening, you may feel drawn to explore through Carl Jung's teachings and his books, and through YouTube videos you will find plenty of material there as well. The Sophia stage, which has to do with the ascension. So for me, what I am exploring lately, that Carl Jung was not just a therapist. He was not just exploring psychology stuff. And of course, energy and psychology, they are interconnected directly. And you can't do energy work on someone without doing psychology and therapy in some ways. Working through their beliefs, working through their traumas. Energy can be just a painkiller if you don't work through deep enough the layers that exist in someone's beliefs, in someone's spirit, and through the pain that exists in someone's soul. So through the Sophia stage, the wisdom cannot be gained if you don't take off the protection mechanisms you have to wear or you should have worn for many years of your life. And it was helpful, but now it isn't anymore. And this is what we are exploring collectively and individually as light workers, all of us. How to take off all the labels we have taken on for the sake of identifying who we are in essence. Even those labels, as a psychic, as an empath, as a healer, we go through these awakenings of understanding that we are healers, psychics, empaths, because we went through a traumatic experience, something that created a wound within us. Okay, so the healing can go and happen up to a point. After that point, the more I hold on to the identity of the healer, the identity of the light worker, the identity of the psychic, the empath, the more it keeps me in the trauma space. So pretty much these last few weeks, and it will continue as an energy upgrade for all of us, is exploring these protection mechanisms we created, all these parts of who we are as part of our identity, like I said, healers, empaths, psychics, light workers, because these are trauma-connected parts of our identity. And then you will ask me, so what? What am I doing now? You're gonna have to explore yourself, your true self. Who are you, regardless of the labels you have taken on, regardless of the healing that has created something positive as an after effect of the wound. Explore yourself and figure out your own sense of self through these questions that will show up. And who am I? And who am I without the label of the trauma? Who am I without the identity of the healer? Who am I without holding on to my past as to who I have successfully become in the now? Because that will shift the sense of the identity you hold for yourself, the labels you hold for yourself, and it will create more space through collapsing. When we are questioning all these things, and we get to also question, and who is me that is asking these questions, everything is shifting in your energy, and your awareness is what stays. The one who observes the observer. So in that space, you will be exploring yourself through awareness, not through labels. The labels sometimes keep us in a space of, I'm wounded and now I'm recovered, but even the recovery is not enough sometimes. The recovery shows that the wound is still there. So we have to collapse both parts of this identity, of this polarity actually, the wound and the healed wound, because sometimes there's not enough healing to heal the wound, if it makes sense. Now going back to the underworld, why I mentioned that at the beginning of this transmission, because we explore all of these things, the labels, who I have been, who I am now, the protection mechanisms as behavioral patterns I created, meaning the way I respond to specific energies, to specific lines, to specific people that hold a specific energy, the way I handle things in my life, in my everyday life, not just with my clients, but with myself mostly. We get to in a space of exploring all of this through a distorted sense of reality, which we call this the lower world, the underworld. And through that space, everything feels off, everything feels dark, everything feels shadowy. It's not exactly that. Many perceive that space as a spiritual warfare, where we actually feel kind of lost. We want to hide away from everyone, the hermit mode, but not exactly just that. As if we are being hit from every direction and we don't know how to protect ourselves. This is the dimension of the lower world, the underworld, where we feel fear intensified in many ways, where we feel and see someone's shadow self because we are coming from that space ourselves. Everything is distorted, a bit dark, a bit distant, a bit cold. As I said, fear is intensified, but also through your senses you have to check in with your physical body. Every time we shift the dimension, we experience it through our physical bodies. This is why we keep saying, spiritually wise, if you want to open up your spiritual gifts, you have to connect more with your physical body through your senses. And this is how your clairs, the other senses, will be opening up even more through the physical senses, through the physicality of this life. And this is how it goes. You're gonna feel some of your senses, your physical senses, shut off because you are in a different dimension, and mostly that of the lower world, the shadow world, the world we are exploring our shadows, and everything feels distorted because obviously we had cut off these aspects of us and worn masks and created protection mechanisms because something was distorted. And for me, usually it's the sense of smelling that is shut off, but not entirely, if it makes sense. You will find yourself feeling that you want to hide away from everyone, that there is a potential danger around you, that there is something that makes you feel uncomfortable, unprotected, and in a way that I need to be hiding away from everything because everything feels weird, everything feels that I'm being threatened. Now, in that space, get excited. Because the more you get excited, the easier it becomes to go through this period of the underworld, like Persephone going down to Hades in the other realm and having the time of her life in a different way. This is what we are called to do. And it's nothing to do with season times, like winter time. It can happen at any time depending on your ascension path, depending on your soul's evolution, depending on the different phases and stages of awakening you're going through. It has nothing to do with periods, but usually what I find interesting is through the times like spring or summer where we have more sun, more energy, more Schumann energies coming on the earth, on this planet, it's easier for us to explore our shadows because extra light is coming in. So don't be afraid of this stage. It is not optional. It is necessary. And yeah, it feels very weird. So do whatever you have to do to feel safe, protected, to feel that you are safe to explore yourself in every way possible from this life, other lifetimes. Whatever these cut off soul parts of yours are, retrieving the safety you have lost for whatever the reason, retrieving the safety of being yourself in every way, where you don't feel safe in regards to someone else, and know that the ascension path has to do with the journey of individualization. So, what helps in these times is to understand that you can feel not safe in regards to someone else because of someone else. But at the end of the day, it is your job to invite those soul parts back and reclaim that safety as your birthright, regardless of who is around you. And this is the most loving thing you can do for yourself at these stages of transformation we are going through. For some reason I see a tortoise and that is, I guess, a message of taking it slow. We don't have to rush anything. Everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. And I know how this may sound annoying in some ways, but at the same time it's a huge relief in case you feel rushed to be done with something, to get over something so you can move to the next stage of your life, of your journey, of your expansion. This is usually the feeling we receive, so we won't be lingering in those shadows, trying to feel again zen or happy or excited without having gone through what we have to explore. Explore those shadows in the underworld. Be fine with that because it is a necessary process. And the other thing I asked, does this ever end? Does this ever stop? Does this ever feel somehow complete? And of course, my question was more oriented on how many times do we have to go down in that underworld as a dimension? How many times do we have to keep retrieving soul aspects of ourselves, soul fragments actually? How many times do we have to do this journey in the underworld that feels so off, so distorted, so difficult to navigate in many ways? And guess what the answer is in that? As many times as we need to retrieve the things, the energies of ourselves we have cut off as protection, as there was nothing else to be done at that point of time, as many times as it is needed, because that energy of the underworld holds parts of your energy. So your higher self is guiding you to that shadow realm so you can retrieve those parts of yourself. And this is the journey of becoming whole. This is the whole ascension path, becoming whole. So this is why the advice that is coming through, get excited when you are in the underworld, when everything feels so distorted, because through that space you are retrieving parts of yourself, you are exploring energetical boundaries, you are exploring the protection mechanisms you had to create, behaviorally speaking, to survive a situation, to go along with some people in your life that you couldn't avoid either way. So, doing that will bring more clarity to you, more power back to you. And it's not a journey of becoming powerful, but in power within yourself, in that sovereignty. And what helps in that space as well is becoming real with yourself. You know my mantra, be true to yourself and be your true self. And that holds a lot of things. It encompasses being real. It encompasses being in your sovereignty. It encompasses everything. So this is what we are doing. And of course, it's not easy. You can also observe around you many physical deaths. People are crossing over because they can't hold this frequency. It is too intense. It is too much for all of us. Yet we are anchored, I believe, in light within ourselves. And that light needs to be explored even through the shadows. And I get it, it's not easy. I've gone through that journey through the underworld too many times so far, and every time I'm asking for extra protection, for clarity. Clarity is not as we have been used to it in the 3D, in the 5D, in the 7D, in every other dimension. Of course, each dimension has its own perception that works in that space, and that is created energetically. So when we are going in the underworld to explore something that is distorted, of course the perception will be kind of distorted. So don't rush into finalized conclusions in that space, but bring back the findings, because they will help you when you are out of that stage and that dimension to bring the actual clarity that is needed. And no, it's not a warfare, a spiritual warfare that many people see it as that. And I'm always asking, What does that mean? Spiritual warfare. What does it mean? I never had an answer because it wasn't that. In other words, it wasn't that. But now it makes sense at least why we experience it like that most of the times, if not every time. Be happy in your explorations. Be excited, not happy, because in that underworld, happiness is not something that exists, to be honest with you, from what I've seen. You will go through the pain, you will go through the feeling of attacking yourself, because this is how the lost pieces feel like energetically. I attacked myself and I couldn't keep moving forward with that way of being, so I had to cut off that part of myself, of my soul, my psyche. Now I'm retrieving it back, or I felt I was attacked by others, so I'm retrieving that part back that I couldn't handle before, I didn't know how to handle before. And guess what? Through the Sophia stage, after coming out of that underworld dimension, what you will be exploring is that you need less protection than ever before. This is one of the findings I came back with. Less protection, less protection, less protection in every sense, in every way, in every way possible of this, on this existence at least. So, uncovering those aspects of yours will be helping you future-wise. That is yet to be seen. We are letting down the armor we have been wearing for years. This is how we are awakening to our true selves. Remember, please, remember, everything is energy. Everything is energy. And that will help you expand your perception of how everything works. As always, be true to yourself and be your true self. Much love, many hugs, wherever you are in your journey, wherever you are located on this world. And see you on the next one.